Hey Denchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and welcome to a little bit of a different review today. I'll be reviewing both the freshman and sophomore debut EPs, I guess you could say, by Shadient, Shadient 1 and Vampire Empire. And actually it's honestly pretty impressive that this artist, who I've been following for some time following the release of Broadcast with Sakura Burst, which was one of my favorite tracks on Sakura's debut album. And honestly, I've been wanting a Shadient EP for quite a while. He's a very talented artist, to say the least, and I look forward to seeing with what he can do in the future. But for now, we're going to get these two EPs, which one of them seems pretty out of place, the other one seems a little better shaped, probably because the first of which, his debut EP, Shadient 1, is a little bit more centered to a concept EP, and Vampire Empire is more just a scattered bunch of tracks that he made between last November and this February, meaning they're a bit shorter and a little bit less serious, just a little more experimental and less banger-esque. Now, I don't think in large part either of these EPs are fantastic. I think the first, his debut EP, definitely shows off his style extremely well, and I like that one quite a bit. The second of which I thought was pretty average, and I do appreciate him dropping these singles, but honestly I think he could have done a lot of work with them, especially tracks like Eyes, which are like 1:30 long, and I think if he could have put a little more work into it, split it into some more parts, this could have made a fantastic longer track. Yeah, the Shadient 1 EP you can get on his Bandcamp. The other one you can listen through on SoundCloud, but you can only download 2 of them, which is very, very odd. I'd like to see him push it to his Bandcamp platform, because I've always enjoyed his Bandcamp platform and most of the WWW collective, including him and Sakura Burst. The EP kicks off with Ultraphone, which is, in a way, I mean, I didn't dislike it, but it's just kind of an overdrawn intro kind of thing. It seems to be pretty stretched out and experimental, not really taking much of a percussive effort on this one. Kind of just using a lot of ambient sounds, and I mean it works in a way, but I always hate it with the intros that build up and then just kind of drop back down into nothing. It's like, what's the point of doing an intro like this? You're just putting a short track in. Like, it's not actually making an intro to. I'm gonna stop complaining about that. The second track, Faktory, is one of my favorites on the record, I'd have to admit. I love it how this thing's split into a few different parts. It's not necessarily drop-centric following the first drop that comes like 10 seconds in, which heavily reminds me of Shadient's remix of Death Camp by Tyler, the Creator, one of my favorite remixes that have released in the past couple of years. It's just so hard, distorted, and edgy. Yeah, this one really reminds me of that, but then it doesn't kind of stick in that style with the distorted hip-hop EDM kind of thing, kind of leading into this more atmospheric rest of the track, which builds up nicely and progresses nice. And I guess there is a second drop, but it's much more mellow and melodic than the first, which I thought was really cool. From Another Place is also one that I'm not getting a lot from, which is going to be the major downfall of this album, just the tracks that I don't necessarily dislike a lot, but that they're just really not doing much for me. This is one of those. It really kind of builds up like a progression, and then it starts just getting really noisy and then just kind of dies out. So I didn't really like that one a ton. Mechanical takes a very similar route to where Faktory went. I think this one does it even better though, especially on the drop, where it's just complete distortion and chaos, probably even more experimental and less hip-hoppy than Faktory went, which I thought was really fun. Split into a few different parts, and it's just so noisy and distorted. I can't get over this one. And then for the rest of the track, it's pretty mellowed down and atmospheric, a little bit more percussive than the intro, but heavily reminding me of that. And finally, Artificial Weather was also a really cool track from the EP. Weird how all the artificial, mechanical, and factory-based tracks seem to be my favorites on this one. This could have made a really awesome 3-track, mechanical-centered EP, but we won't go into that. Its flaws sometimes seems to work for it because it builds up hype to the intense drops of tracks like Faktory and Mechanical. But Artificial Weather, on the other hand, is very not drop-centric. Although this does take a very similar route, like I had mentioned a couple times before, to the intro of this EP, I think this one does it a lot better. The melodies you can definitely get yourself drowned in. Just a really good closer, and I think it works better that way than as an opener. I think he could have hit a lot more hard in the beginning of this EP, and that would have made it a lot better of an EP in my opinion. I'm going to be done with this EP for now. I'm going to slap it a solid 6 and continue on to our next EP, which is Vampire Empire. And for the most part, this EP isn't taking at all the same kind of direction he went. Like I said, it's much more of a collection than his debut EP was supposed to be, which I can't judge it too much for being, but as it is considered an EP, so I'm going to have to consider this all concepts initiated. Most of these tracks are honestly pretty chill, with the exception of Overthinking Everything, which I thought was one of the cooler ones on the EP, but overall we've got Flutter, which much like the Shadient 1 EP, starts off a little bit harder and then kind of continues into atmospheric toward the end. It's not necessarily hard, but more percussive and melodic at the beginning, which I thought was cool. Eyes really isn't doing anything for me on this one. Overthinking Everything's actually a pretty cool track, except it gets extremely repetitive and the track is a little bit under 2 minutes long, so probably not one of my favorites either on this one. And then my favorite by far on the EP is Vertical Horizon, which the guitar samples in this one are actually probably the most impressive thing to me. I don't think I've heard any real instrumentation. I don't want to start an argument because I do think synthesizers and everything are instruments, but in this case I think the actual instrumentation on this one is really cool, and the fact that it's distorted and blended so well with this modern EDM distorted sound is actually really cool. It also blends really well with the percussion and strings, so this one makes for a really cool track and a really cool closer for the EP. So I'm going to give this one a 4.5. Like I said, you can't expect much from an EP like this, especially when it's just a collection of tracks he made over the course of basically 4 months, which is actually pretty impressive considering there's some good tracks on the second EP. So anyway, what do you guys think of these? I'm definitely going to link these in the description, probably the SoundCloud links, because I don't think they're available on Spotify, which is kind of annoying, but you can deal with it. I'll just bit.ly them or whatever in the description, and they'll be there for you to listen, and I'll have the ratings and all that crap down there as well. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. I like these okay, and Shadient's an awesome producer, and his remixes are absolute fire too. And I think he's got a lot of future and potential. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you later. Peace.